form of asthma medication by maybe injection, by oral, then you need to apply with a full medical form while you're using that. So now, just to cover, basically avoid drugs that are not prescribed by a medical doctor. But if it's prescribed by a medical doctor, always inform them that you're an athlete and about the service. And apply for QE before you use it, and always be wary of supplements, even though they say it's natural. Because geranium is natural. So, okay, I've completed this. Okay, now we quickly go to testing. Okay, I think some of the testing for athletes that you're in now is not here. Okay, but I think LP, right? Yeah, LP was previously in our registered testing pool, but now it's been removed from it. So basically, athletes who are in your IF registered testing pool, we have to include that in. And the other criteria we look at also is those who have committed anti-doping violation before they're recovering from injury, coming back from retirement, or just rapid progress in their performance. Right? That's and if you're training with personnel that's been associated with such practices before, right? And also we have another testing pool called the domestic testing pool. So the consequence of not complying with the whereabouts requirements, we put them into our registered testing pool. So these are some of the criteria. So the other domestic testing pool is basically we look at athletes from sports with lower risk of doping, and also those representing major games for the year. So we do a random, or it could be targeted to put into this pool. So what we do is we collect whereabouts information from these two pools. Okay. So the registered testing pool, if ever any of you are included, so for each quarter, basically you need to give us your whereabouts information, which is a daily 60-minute time slot of where you be, your overnight address, your competition and training schedules, and any other regular schedule, okay, like your school or your work. So for every quarter, for every 3 months, you need to give us that. So if you fail to do that, it could either be a filing failure. That means your information is not accurate, or it's not been submitted by the deadline. And a mistest happens if we test you during the 60-minute and you're not there. So that's what they call a mistest. So filing failure, mistest, they are called whereabouts failures. So if there's any combination of 3, so it could be two filing failures, 1 mistest, within a period of 18 months, that's when you'll be sanctioned. So the sanction is between 1 year to 2 years. Okay. For the domestic testing pool, we also go by the quarter, but we just need your competition and training schedules and any other regular activity. Okay. So there is no 60-minute and overnight address. So what we do is, if there's persistent non-compliance with providing updated or accurate whereabouts, or very frequently you're not where you are when we test you, then we will include you into our registered testing pool. That's where you'll be sanctioned. Okay. So there are types of doping control tests. We could actually do either urine or blood, but or both, okay, at any one time. Could be in competition. That's where we test if you're a medalist. It could be very random. Could be record breakers, which SAA does now, and it could be targeted. Okay. Or it could be out of competition. That's where we collect your whereabouts information, and we do no advance notice. So we don't call you and say, oh, we're going to test you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay. That doesn't happen. That's why we collect whereabouts information. So it can happen at your training venue, at your home, or at your place of work also. So it could be targeted as well. So if there's any suspicion, we could actually just ask for information maybe from the NSA, and then we can actually conduct the test. So your rights as an athlete during doping control is to have a representative. So whether you're a minor or not, you have that right. So your team manager or your coach, you can have them accompany you. You can have an interpreter. So maybe in an international event, maybe the doping control officer doesn't speak very well in English, so you don't understand, you can ask for an interpreter. Okay. You can request for any information about the doping control procedure if you're not sure, and request the PA to report to the doping control station, okay, for valid reasons, and these are the valid reasons. So it could be locating your representative or your interpreter. You need to attend victory ceremonies, or you need to compete in further events. So like track and field, you could be competing in a few events. So if it's very close, you can request to delay. Or if you're injured, you need to receive medical attention. You need to fulfill some media commitments and interviews. You need to warm down. Or you need to find your accreditation pass or some form of photo identification. Or let's say during an hour competition test, you're tested during training. You're notified maybe midway through, you can complete your training session first before you provide your sample. And any other reasonable circumstances that can come up. So your responsibility is of course to remain in direct observation of the doping control officer or the chaperone that has actually notified you. So even when you say I need to complete my training session, once they've notified you, you'll be under their observation. So you cannot deliberately go and hide, play catching. It happened during the Youth Olympic Games. One of the athletes actually tried to run away from the doping control officer, and there was a chase. Yeah. You need to produce appropriate photo identification. This just to verify that they've notified the correct athlete. Or if, let's say, if you don't have a photo identification with you, what we can do is a third party can actually verify, but the names and the signature of the third party will be recorded. And of course, you need to comply with the collection procedures. Otherwise, it could be a sanction, right? That could be not cooperating. And of course, report immediately unless you have a valid reason. So these are the doping control equipment that we are using now. Okay. In most countries and most anti-doping agencies use this. However, if you're tested, you'll be familiar with it. So, but the key thing to note is always inspect the equipment for any signs of tampering or contamination. It could be deliberate or not, because like in our weather, even when we store our doping control equipment, we do get mold in the bottles itself. So always check that it's there's no signs of any contamination in there, because it could result in a positive to you. So that's your disadvantage. Okay. So the procedures, I won't go through in detail. Okay. We actually got brochures in there, so it actually explains in detail. Or you can actually go to the WADA website. They have a video there. Okay. So basically, what happens during a doping control test is the doping control officer or chaperone, they will locate you, right, according to your whereabouts or your events. They will notify you and tell you your rights and responsibilities. They will ask for your photo identification. Okay. So following that, you have to accompany them to the doping control station. So if you're not ready to give the sample yet, so you wait. And during that time, you can hydrate, but don't overhydrate. Okay, because you have to meet a certain, they call specific gravity, but it's basically the density of the urine, so that the test can actually detect things. Because overhydration dilutes the sample. So once you're ready, then the doping control officer, they'll ask you to select a collection vessel. Okay? So always also inspect the collection vessel, okay, and see that it's not contaminated. So then you accompany, the DCO will accompany you to the toilet, right? You'll be asked to move your top. So you're wearing a jacket, you remove your jacket, right? If it's long sleeve, roll up your sleeves to above the elbows, pull up to torso, and bottoms down to knees. So this whole part here is clear, right? And that's when the DCO will observe the urine sample coming out into the collection vessel. So you need to give at least 90 milliliters of urine. Okay. So anything less, then you have to wait and then give another sample. And if it doesn't meet specific gravity, you give another sample. Okay. So all this takes a lot of time because the body actually produces urine between half an hour to 1 hour, right? So you don't want to spend too much time waiting in the doping control station. So always give the sample only when you sure that the urine is sufficient. Okay. So once you've provided the sample, okay, you will be asked to select a collection kit. So again, check that your selection vessels, the collection vessels and bottles are all clean, right? The seals are not tampered with. numbers on the bottles and the box, they're all the same. So you will proceed to separate your urine sample into the A and B bottles. So at all times, your urine sample is actually handled only by you. The DCO will not touch the collection vessel or the bottles until it's been sealed. Okay. So you can't say that, oh, the doping control officer actually contaminated my urine. So you handle it at all times. So if your sample is insufficient, they will do it, they will keep it and partially cap it and seal it. But of course, you need to know that the sample is being stored in a secure area, and you have sight of it at all times, so that nobody can actually tamper with it. Okay. So you go through the documentation of recording the volume. They will measure your specific gravity. In some countries use the refractometer, which is basically it reflects light. So the denser it is, then you get a higher reading. Okay. So for a refractometer, you need to have at least 1.005 reading. For a lab stick, which is the common one that you use in your classes, right, where you measure that you have the rainbow colors. So there's one for specific gravity. The reading is 1.010. Of course, it's not as sensitive as the refractometer. Okay. So you need to meet these two requirements. Then they will ask you if you've taken any medication. As well, if you are asthmatic and you're using the one by inhalation, declare it. If you're using any supplements, declare it. If you're using any other medication, declare it. And if you have a TUE, tell them I have a TUE for a certain substance. If you have a copy, provide that copy. Otherwise, the anti-doping organization will have a copy if you've actually applied to them for the TUE. Then they also ask you for your consent, whether you allow your urine for research. Okay. Because the labs, they won't know the names of the athletes the samples belong to, but they can keep the samples for research. They can actually study a lot of other things in there, maybe hydration or substances that they find in there. So you have to give your consent. If not, then they won't use it for research. Right. So this is basically the overview of how the procedures are. If you want, you can actually do a workshop and you can role play it and have a feel of how the whole process is if they have not ever been through one. Because it can be quite disturbing for a first timer, because especially when you're giving your samples, you're actually doing it in front of somebody. I mean, it's different when, for guys, I don't know, it's just a guess when you're standing next to each other, right? You don't go like that. But this one, somebody's standing there and looking at you, staring at you directly. So similar for a female. So as a first time athlete doing it, it's quite a daunting experience, and we've had the experience of an athlete not being able to give a sample. Right? And she ended up in hospital, but that is coincidence because she actually had a stomach illness, discomfort as well. Yeah. So that's why I say it's quite a daunting experience to give a sample in front of somebody. Okay. In terms of the procedures for minors, okay. So if you don't have for the normal ones who are considered as adults, right? You don't need a athlete representative, but for minors you need a representative. And the athlete representative will actually observe the DCO during sample collection. They don't actually watch the athlete, okay? They are basically observing the DCO who's observing the athlete. So it's basically to ensure that there's no funny hanky-panky doing, and if the procedures have been done correct, right? So for our anti-doping rules, it's anybody who is 16 years and below, right? So you get 16 years and below, and you've been notified, you need to have a representative with you. At your IF, then you need to check your IF anti-doping rules, and if they don't specify, then the country where the event is being held, then perhaps the age of the minor will apply. So it varies from country to country. So the doping control procedures, you can actually watch the video in WADA's website. We have a link there as well, and from the brochures that is in the file and also at our website. Okay. So just a summary, don't overhydrate because you need to have a certain specific gravity for your urine. Inspect all your equipment for signs of tampering and contamination. So ensure that all the unsealed urine samples are within your view, and you are the only one who maintains the control of it. Okay. unless you give that permission to the doping control officer, because you may be injured, you can't turn, so you could actually have your athlete representative do that for you. And if you don't have a representative, the DC, you can ask the DCO to do it, but you need to give the permission. Okay. And on to our last part. Okay, this is probably something that I hope won't happen again to athletes in Singapore. Okay, results management when we have let's say a positive test result. So basically, results management will be by your IAAF if it's the test that's initiated by them. For example, at the international events, or if registered testing pools, so they do the test on the testing pool athletes out of competition. Results will be managed by ADS if we initiate the test at national events like the coming Singapore Open. So what happens when the test results come back from a report? It could be, so if you have an adverse analytical finding, so that's the term that they use for positive. They call it adverse analytical finding. So your A sample will be tested first, and it comes back. And if there's an adverse analytical finding, there will be an administrative review. Or it could come back with an atypical finding. The atypical finding means it could be a certain substance in there, but testosterone level that is slightly elevated. So it could be because it's a substance that's naturally produced by the body. So it could be because your body has been producing a lot, or it could be because of medication. So they have to check. So what happens is there will be an administrative review conducted to actually see if you have a TUE that's been pre-approved, and if there's any departures in the procedures during doping control. So whether there's any possible contamination or somebody tampering with the procedure. So, but if nothing, you have, and if let's say you don't have a TUE, and what happens is then they will notify you that it could be a possible anti-doping adverse analytical finding, right? And they tell you have the right. Do you want to test your B sample to confirm the A sample result? You can have you can attend, or you can have a witness to somebody to attend on your behalf to actually witness the opening and analysis of the A sample, and also of course to attend a disciplinary hearing for, let's say, a provisional suspension. Okay. So let's say if you decide not to have your B sample, so you are basically admitting yes, I took something, then you will go straight to a disciplinary hearing. So after that, if your B sample confirms, then you could be provisionally suspended if you are in an international event, so you can't take part in any other events. Then what happens is there will be a disciplinary hearing. Okay, so your IAAF will have perhaps their own tribunal or a committee that hears your case. So, and Anti-Doping Singapore, we have a National Anti-Doping Disciplinary Committee. It's not appointed by us, so it's appointed by the ministry. So there is no conflict of interest. Right? So what happens if you are found prematurely first, before the hearing results are out, your results could be disqualified. Okay, your medals could be forfeited, points and prizes. Then disqualification of subsequent results. Right? And then eventually, if you are found guilty, the sanction could be from warning to life ban. So warning could be because maybe inadvertent use, and there are reasons to you're given to prove that it was not deliberate. Okay, so it could be a warning to life ban. And if you're not happy with the results, so you think that it could be because of something else that was not considered, right? You want to appeal, you can, for any of the cases that's been heard by the test results managed by ADS, you can appeal to the National Anti-Doping Appeals Committee. This is also a committee appointed by the ministry, right? So they will hear your appeal and see if the decision made by the disciplinary committee will be upheld. Okay. And your IAAF, I think theirs is the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So this is quite a costly appeals process, because to hear an appeals case or disciplinary case, we need to pay, I think, 5,000 upfront just to apply for a hearing. So any decision, the IAAF, ADS, or WADA, they have a right to appeal. So even if you don't appeal, any of these organizations can also appeal. Because if they think that maybe the sanction meted out is too lenient or too strict, they can appeal. Okay. And finally, if you need to look up more information, so there are various sources, websites. One is our website and WADA's website. WADA actually has some very interesting online tools for coaches, both levels, elite and recreational level. So there are different information requirements for high performance as well as recreational coaches. And for athletes, I think some of you have tried, may have tried, okay, when we had our national swimming championship. Some of the sports school track and field athletes actually were training here. They tried, and actually I got some very positive results from Japan. Because I think at the recent Asian Athletics, yeah, so the Japan Anti-Doping Agency, they were asked to do outreach and testing. So I think some of our Singapore athletes actually tried the quiz and they said, wow, your athletes actually got all of it correct. So that's quite good news. So that's what we got back from them. IAAF also has this resource online called Real Winner. Okay, so this is based on scenarios of anti-doping. So it gives you this option of choosing the path that you want to take. Do you want to take drugs? And if you don't, then what happens? Okay. And then there's publications, of course. WADA actually now has an iTunes application for the so any of you who have an iPhone, you can actually download it. So you don't have to carry either the hard copy or anything around. So if you're seeing a doctor that is not the sports council, you can actually show the doctor that is on your iPhone. Okay, so finally, just some notes to end. Respect your national flag. I mean, if you ever think of wanting to dope, okay, think of the national flag, the flag that you wear on your jersey and your coat. Respect your national flag, respect your sport. Like I said, you know, the case of Flojo, Ben Johnson. So all these and the recent India one. So the whole sport of athletics in India is now being doubted whether or not their athletes are really clean. Okay. Respect your fellow athletes because everybody wants to compete fairly. Right? They don't want to know that my results actually I lost because somebody took something. Okay. Respect yourself. Be a true winner. Thank you. Do you have any questions?